We're on.
What's going on, everybody? We're back. Mark Winkler, published author, in the house. We got Ronnie Fernandez, the mastermind of minds, licensed clinical therapist. We're back in the house, man, doing
Hello,
our thing.
everybody.
Is that right, Ronnie?
That's right, man. I'm glad to be back, and I'm really, really happy to be doing this, man. Just having some really, really good discussions. So I'm
You
looking
know
forward
what?
to this one.
I thought about this. I talked to my wife the other day, man, and she really talked about how healthy this is, having these discussions, right? Putting these, just two guys talking,
Yeah,
but we're sharing our conversation. So there's a couple of dynamics operating here, I think. I think one is it's healthy for men to talk about
yeah,
things that other than some of the things that men traditionally talk about. So I think that's a good thing. But I
hmm
also think it's a wonderful thing to be then to say, I think this is worth sharing, right?
yeah,
Because that can get a little scary for men to actually share, right? To
yeah,
share their opinions about subject matters that could be a little different than what men talk about. So
yeah. Absolutely. And even when we hear about what other men talk, it's like a short little, 60-second, like statement, and that's it. And there's no
yeah,
conversation back and forth, or it's like minds, people that are thinking the same thing, and then it's just like, and I really think we need to think about the other person, like, why
right.
is that person thinking this way? Why am I not thinking this way? And so I think having conversations like this, and even when I don't even think it's like pushback against each other. It's just different opinions, and I think we have to
Yeah,
look at it that way. It's like, we don't have to agree with each other. These are, it's not all people are this way, or that you need to do this all the time. It's like there's different point of views.
I think that's a good point. I think that's the unhealthy side of social media sometimes,
Yeah,
that we're locked in these bubbles of same opinions. So we really don't oftentimes get, and it's not about rancor, it's not about maliciousness. It's about being able to have a difference of opinion, a different thought, so you can then challenge yourself,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so, but unfortunately, with social media and the way these algorithms work, you just get really hooked up to friends that share the same opinion, because you
yeah,
only normally friend people, or they friend you if they see some sort of commonality of thought. And then when they feed you the advertisements, like every
yeah,
4 posts, you see an advertisement. The advertisement caters to your frame of thought. So I think that that's unhealthy, man. I think you need to step outside your bubble. I think you need to step outside your comfort zone, and I think you need to have conversations. And that is kind of what we're going to do today,
yeah,
right? We're gonna
yeah.
we're gonna have a conversation, because I think a lot of people are talking about this subject, and that is Dwayne Wade's decision to support his child, uh, claiming or saying now that she is going to live her life as a trans woman.
Mhm.
And I've recently wrote a post about it. But before I wrote the post, I was on a lot of different fatherhood platforms.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of differences of opinion. But
Yeah.
what I did see was there was a lot of hatred.
A lot, man. Yeah.
There's a lot of hatred.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to really understand both sides, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because my first instinct is like, whoa, like that's a big, what he did is, I mean, it's a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, kind of, accepting her for the way that she is, it's awesome. But then it's also, wow, that's a big move as far as, the way the whole process goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's it's nothing that's going to be resolved in a post. It's in
Right.
an Instagram. It's like, oh yes, I'm for Dwayne Wade. Oh no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
against. Like, oh, like it's not. It's a heavy subject. I mean, even I have, like, even talking about it, it's like, ugh, like, I don't know if I should talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. Um, because I think the first thing that has to be said is that the high suicide rate of the
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQ community is
Mm-hmm.
huge. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not something just like, oh yeah, she's this way, she needs to be called hate, like, whatever. Like, first of all, this is the guideline, that this is what's the overall thing that's looming is the high suicide rate. And if you don't and the acceptance, and if the person feels accepted or not, that is always going to be there. You know what I'm saying? So we can't lose that's the importance. And whatever your opinion is, if it's healthy, if it's not, to go to have the surgery or not, that's I think that's very debatable. But it's so important that that's what we're dealing with. You know what I mean? So
Right.
before we say anything, before we post anything, I mean, think about it. I mean, I think it's like 50% have like at least attempted suicide. I mean
50%
that.
in their lifetime, absolutely. And it's
Yeah,
even higher for the trans community. So
yeah,
you're
yeah.
absolutely right.
So it's a huge deal. So before you post anything, before you say anything, and before you say anything
Right.
to maybe a colleague somebody that you know, like this is a heavy subject that is not going to be your point. Your point of view can't be um explained well in a post. Either you just be positive, you support, or just don't, because I mean those things can be really hurtful, especially with somebody that's going through that transition, and a father that has to do that. Like it's a lot.
It's a lot, man, and I think it's key that you said that it's a process. So if someone says that I am now going to live my truth, and my truth is I am going to not live as the gender assigned to me at birth. So when they make that decision, that does not automatically jump to, as Little Bozy, this rapper, said, it doesn't automatically jump to the gender reassignment surgery. There's a
Yeah,
process, right? And
yeah,
that process is a long, drawn out process that includes therapy, counseling, medical counseling. So that's a process. But the beginning of the process is that when if your child comes to you and says, I am this, whether it's I am transgender, I am gay, whatever they say, if you as a parent shut them down, if you as a parent lock them out of having to be able to know that you support them or even have a conversation, you send them then out into the world damaged. Because
yeah,
the first acceptance of life, the people get their self-esteem from their parents. So if the first major blow comes from their parents not accepting them, not even wanting to entertain the conversation. And look, I get it. It's a difficult subject. It's a difficult thing for a parent who has not been brought up in that orientation of thought to
yeah,
then say, look, I accept you fully. At least if you feel that way, at least the parent can say, I don't understand.
yeah,
I was raised differently,
yeah,
but I am going to support your decision. And that may take a lot for some parents,
yeah,
but if they can say that, they can make that first step. I think that they'll make a huge step in the child's life to feel confident in who they are. Because ultimately, if that is who the person is, they're going to be that way when they leave your house.
yeah,
So you can let them leave your house feeling confident and empowered, or damaged and hurt. You
yeah,
have that decision, but they're going to leave with something. What
yeah.
you give them will determine, I think, how they order themselves throughout life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know any other bigger process or discussion that somebody's going to have as far as the impact on their mental health, if the child doesn't feel accepted, or I mean maybe not even accepted, but um that the child is put down, or even if it's an adult, you don't. I think just having negative comments is the worst thing you can do, and like just saying really negative things. I mean, even if it's just like, hey, I love you, and we'll figure this out together. Something like that, something that's neutral is probably is better than saying negative things, or making fun of making fun of the situation. Anything like that is just saying I love you, and we'll figure this out. I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably what I would say. I mean, I don't know, because it's such a hard conversation to have, and I understand the importance of the conversation, because if the child feels like he or she is just kind of like um doesn't feel accepted, it's a huge impact, and the suicide rate is huge. So again, we're dealing with
Yeah.
people's lives here. It's not
Yeah.
just a normal conversation.
And I think if we can keep that in the forefront of our thoughts, because we all have ideas and ideologies that we were saddled with when we were born, right? We believe a certain way, and those beliefs come from how we were raised. And
Mhm.
so when we're now raising our children, we have to ask ourselves, we have to I think we should re-examine some of the things that we were given and say, hey, look, does this work for me? Does this not work for me? It's obviously not working for my child. So am I going to then hold my child accountable to the same things that I was given as a human being? And if you still feel like, yeah, I want to do that, right? Then you have to go a little bit deeper. In
Mhm.
doing that, right, how will that affect my child?
Yeah.
Right. And I think, as you said, it's critical, right? You have to think about the mental health of your child. You got to think about your child is coming to you saying that. And basically, what they're saying is, I don't want to conform to the same social constructs that you were given, right? At
Yeah.
birth, we were assigned a gender, right? And that gender was, if we had biological parts of a man or a man or woman, if it's a man, we were designated or assigned the gender of a boy. And if it's a girl, genitalia, we were assigned a woman. And with
Yeah.
those assignments come obligations, right? Things that you should do and things that you shouldn't do in
Yeah.
society, right? And so as you grow, if you feel like, look, I don't want to play football, I
Yeah.
want to do this. And if that thing is in the realm of womanhood, then you shouldn't be made to feel guilty, or you should not be made to feel like you can't do that. Vice versa for a woman, right? Because ultimately it's about freedom. It's about how much of a human being can I grow into? And if I can only grow as much as a social construct allows me to grow, then I have stunted my growth. So that's
Yeah.
at the basis of it, right? We're not even talking about the surgery yet, right? We're just
Yeah,
talking
but
about freedom of choice.
I even think with that, sometimes we can get
Hmm.
lost in that. I I,
Hmm.
I think and I think that's where we lose a lot of men,
Hmm.
as far as when we're older, is like the social construct
Hmm.
conversation, all these, and it's just I think we have to be really basic, where it's just like, just love your child. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Just love them, and it's a journey that you guys can go on together. Because if we bring
Hmm.
in all this other stuff, then it gets really complicated for people. And I know we're in the field and we have a better understanding of it, and it
Hmm.
makes sense to us. But for a father that's working 9 to 5, working 50, 60 hours a week, and trying to provide for his family, and then this conversation happens, just like, what's going on?
Right.
And I think we have to do a better job of keeping it simple. It's like, look, this is a really huge conversation, and the child needs to feel accepted. And if you have some issues with it, say, I love you, and then we'll figure this out together, and
Hmm.
because if we get into that, man, then we get in debates. You know what I mean? Then we get in this, and I think the one thing that we can't debate is, we love our children, right? And that's where I want to kind of keep things basic. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't
Look,
I don't know if
look,
I'm.
no, I get it. And I think when you're talking about just on a base level of making sure that you keep your child alive, you keep your child mentally healthy, and you're having a conversation with someone who just does not get it, right? Then you have to just go baseline with them. Hey, look, if you don't do this, if you don't give your child food, clothing, and shelter,
Yeah.
your child is going to die, right?
Yeah.
So we can say, then we can just replace that with, if you don't hear your child, if you don't listen to your child's voice, your child is going to find that someplace else. And the someplace else may be abusive, the someplace else may not be caring and loving as you would. So I get that.
Hmm.
I say that then once we have that, I almost look at it like Maslow's high order. Once we
Yeah.
have that baseline taken care of, right, then we
Yeah.
have to grow. Then we
Yeah.
have to grow up, right? Because I think that we don't question things enough, Ronnie. I think that we don't question why we believe in certain things. Why then? Because most people say, and I give you an example. Most people say, he's too young. He's 12 years old. He's too young to make that decision. Don't let him make that decision now. Well, would you say that if he was saying that, I want to date a girl? If he was saying that, would you say, no, he's too young to make that decision? Don't let him make that decision. Or if he says, you know what, I want to wear a suit to church, would you say, are you too young to wear a suit? It's only because we're saying things that are outside of the construct of our thinking. If we can't accept that, right? So
Hmm.
if the person is too young to decide whether or not they want to dress at 12, to wear a dress, a boy to wear a dress, then they're too young to make a decision if they want to wear men's clothing, right? They're too young to make any decision about their gender, If they're too young for this, then they're too young for that. So so that's what I'm talking about. When you start elevating this conversation,
Yes.
you start challenging why you believe in what you believe.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely a conversation I think that once you get to that point that you're gonna have,
Mm-hmm.
But I just see all these really negative comments, and
There are
it's
a lot, man.
just
There are a lot.
it's bad. I looked at them and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, wow, that's I mean, and so it's like, okay, I feel like talking to those people
Mm-hmm.
that put those comments in there of
Mm-hmm.
like, look, like the bare knuckle, the bare like minimum, like, and I think these conversations are really good for people that are into these subjects, that are into like, the hierarchies and systems and all this type of stuff, and that's awesome. But I don't know if a lot of people are. You mean like the mass majority,
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
because I mean, it really it's really hard to see those those
True.
comments, when it's just
True.
like he's just bottom line, guy's just trying to do the best for his family, and for
Right.
his daughter, and that's it. That's all he's trying to do. And for people just to say all these negative comments, it's I mean, it's really concerning, and that's why I try to like just try to see it at the bare minimum. It's like, this is, suicide rate is huge, and like, you know that's what we're dealing with right now,
You know what, Brandon? Look, I respect that, man. And I think we all have roles to play, right?
hmm
You are a mental healer, right? And so you understand that in that process that you have to take things in stages.
yeah.
Right? You can't just,
Y-
if someone comes to you and say, "Hey, look, I want this. I'm stuck." You can't automatically just start talking about, well, why are you stuck? What's the deeper part of this? And no,
yeah,
you got to let them. You have to gain their trust.
yeah,
You have to get them to feel like they can share with you, and it's not going to be abusive. It's not going to take advantage of it. So there's a process. So I get that.
yeah,
I just feel this last point. I just feel that once we know, like guys like you and I, once we
mhm,
know, I think there is a certain obligation that we have to elevate the conversation. We have to do that wisely, but I
mhm,
think we have an obligation to
yeah,
raise the bar.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think the process you're talking about is it's kind of you want to meet the person where they're at,
Mm-hmm.
so I yeah, no, I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying, but it's just, oh man, I guess just after reading a lot of
It's
those
a tough one,
comments.
huh, Rodney?
Yeah, because I mean, you 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 don't want, like, when I see a client or when I see a problem, like, the answer's easy. The roadmap's easy. It's kind of like that dance you do to get there,
Yeah.
and it's like, I don't know, man. But I think this is a really good conversation, and it was hard to have this conversation even for me, because it's such a delicate subject,
Mhm.
and so yeah, I think it went well.
Let me just say this one thing.
Yeah.
Why I think it was difficult for me as well. I am writing the post, and I know that I'm eventually going to have the conversation because I accept that there's still locks that I have in my mind that were put there about how I should think and how I should respond to the world. Some of the world views that I still have, I still carry from when I was a child, right?
Yeah.
And so those are still locked in my brain, and I have not unlocked those things where I feel like I can be fully involved in these matters, right? So I know that, so I accept that. So when I walk into this conversation, I know that I may still have some reservations
Yeah.
based upon what I was taught and based upon my ignorance of the matter, because I'm not fully versed in this particular matter, right? And
Yeah.
so I know if I understand that those two things are operating, but in the middle of that, that's supporting the reason why I'm here is love,
Yeah.
right? So because I want
Yeah.
people to operate from a place of love. That's kind of
Yeah.
my love is my universal key. It may not fully unlock those chains in my mind, but at least it won't stop me from being able to have a conversation with a father who says, my child is transgender and I support that. I can
Yeah.
say, you know what, you love your child and I support that.
Yeah. But we also have to like be able to sit down with that person and hear them
Hmm.
out for when they
Hmm.
say, look, I'm having trouble accepting my son or daughter for
Hmm.
what they are. Okay. And sit down
Absolutely.
and hear them.
Right.
Why? Is it because you thought your son would be this way? You
Hmm.
thought, you thought your daughter would be this way. You wanted to walk her down the aisle. You
Hmm.
wanted to see your son catch a touchdown pass. Like, are
Hmm.
those the issues that's going on with you? And talking about those type of issues. And I feel like we can't say you need to think this, or you're homophobe, or you're all this stuff. It's like, no,
Yeah.
okay, what losses are you dealing with right now? What's
Sure.
going on with you? Like, because as a parent, I mean, I have two little girls and I want to walk them down the aisle. I want to do all these, daddy daughter things. And
Mhm.
there's going to be a process if I don't see that, like
Yeah.
it's going to be that sense of loss. And
Yeah.
so being able to talk about that and not being, not feeling like you can't say this or you're gonna be
Hmm.
seen as, as somebody that doesn't like, the LGBTQ community. Like it's
Hmm.
and I think that's what I'm afraid of too, is like of just saying stuff because you're supposed to say it. It's like, no,
Yeah.
okay, how are you feeling doing this? Like
Yeah.
your son is no longer wants to be identified as a male. Like
Hmm.
he wants to be identified as her. What is that for you? Like, why do you
Hmm.
have these thoughts? And so I think another thing that we have to take away,
I,
because
I no, no, Ronnie, I think that's very important that a person should have an environment where they're able to process their feelings. I do think that they should keep in mind, though, that their loss is not their child's loss, right? So I may not have the opportunity to walk my daughter down the aisle
hmm
with a man,
yeah,
but I can still have the opportunity to walk my daughter down the aisle,
yeah,
right? So I'm not losing my daughter. I'm losing the opportunity to have certain social, benchmarks,
yeah,
certain social experiences that, I may not have them in the way that I was taught I should have them. But what they're not losing their child, right?
yeah,
So if they're unable to move past that, if having the
yeah,
conversation, which they should have, they should be able to
yes,
talk about their feelings.
hmm
But if they're unable to move past that, and then they cut their child out of their life, then the bigger loss is that they don't get to experience anything, and their child doesn't get to experience the things that they're going to still do, but they can't do it with their parent.
yeah,
So I think that's the other side, but that's the elevated part of the conversation.
yeah,
I get where you're coming from. Let's go baseline. Let's make sure everyone's okay. Then we
yeah,
can start elevating the dialogue.
yeah.
So how do we do, man? I,
I
I
think we
think
did
we did
it.
it.
Woo, man.
It was a rough one.
It's rough. It's definitely it's because it's evolving right now. Like we're
Yeah.
still trying to find, what works best, what works, what doesn't, and is such a heavy subject. And because I mean, I don't we don't know the perfect answer. We don't, we
Mm.
really don't, because we have to kind of address both feelings. Like, and
Yeah.
I don't want somebody to feel like, oh, that's awesome, and they
Yeah.
have all these like, oh my god, I don't want this and this, but I can't talk about it. But
Mhm.
you're gonna have to find somebody to talk about it with. So
Maybe the perfect answer is love, and then in
that's it.
love we can
Love is
we can
always the
find
answer, bro.
we can
I know
find
it's cheesy. I
it's
know,
corny,
man.
right? It sounds like a Pepsi commercial,
I
but
know.
I think if we operate from love, I think we can find a place where we can both be happy.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there you go.
All right, man.
All
All
right,
right,
guys.
all right.
I hope you enjoyed being on this ride with us. We know it was a bumpy one. Maybe some emotions got flared up,
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
appreciate you staying with us on this. And this is the kind of conversation that you get here. It's not fluff, but
No, it's not. No.
we want to take you to different places, and we hope that you leave your comments. We hope that you join into the conversation.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is Mark Winkler, my partner in crime, Ronnie Fernandez. Peace.